So hello everybody, a very warm welcome to you all to the 6th annual Sub-Sahara Spectrum Management Conference. My name is Dan Kraft, and on behalf of everybody at Forum Global, I'd like to say how great it is to have you all with us here today. Over the course of the next 3 days, we have more than 45 top-level speakers who are going to be participating in 9 different sessions focusing on key spectrum topics for the region. And we're really looking forward to what I'm sure is going to be some fascinating discussions. This is the second year now that we have had to hold this event fully online via our virtual platform rather than meeting in person. And whilst we, like I'm sure many of you out there, are really looking forward to the time that we're again able to meet face to face, at the same time, this virtual format does bring with it a number of benefits. And one of these is the way in which it enables a far larger number of people to attend and participate in the event than would be possible if we were doing this in person. And I think a testament to this is that this year we have over 600 people registered to attend the conference from 95 different countries. And that's from all across Africa, of course, but also across the rest of the world. And I know that many of you who are joining us today are actually going to be celebrating Eid this week. So a particular thank you to all of you out there who have taken your time out of that to join us for the conference. And of course, Eid al-Adha Mubarak to you all. But wherever you are joining us from, we really are delighted to have you all with us and looking forward to what I'm sure is going to be 3 days of fascinating discussions. In a second, it's going to be my pleasure to officially open the conference and to get things going with our welcome ceremony. But before we do that, I did just want to mention a few things. First of all, I wanted to give a bit of information about the platform that we're going to be using today. Now, I'm sure this platform is by now familiar to many of you out there, but to those of you who haven't used it before, I wanted to just take a couple of minutes to introduce some of the areas and the different features. So the platform has been built to not only allow for the panels and presentations to take place and allow you to participate in those, but also to try and replicate some of the benefits you get at a face-to-face event in terms of the networking, interaction, side meeting, exhibition area, and things like that. And as I said, I just wanted to mention a few of these different areas now to hopefully enable you to get the most out of your time with us. So first of all, I wanted to turn your attention to the interactive areas on the right-hand side of your screen. So you can see on the right-hand side of your screen, you have ways that you can interact with the speakers, ways that you can add your comments and questions via the chat function. So please do feel free to use that and add your comments and thoughts on the various sessions there. You also have audience polls, which we'll be running. We're going to have nothing today, but tomorrow we will have some audience polls running. So we're going to get your feedback on specific questions. And we also have a networking area there. So the networking area you can access by looking at the list of attendees. When you do view the list of attendees that are available there, you'll see options to direct message people, send them a private message, and also to invite people to a one-to-one or even a group video message. So you can do that, and please do make use of that part of the platform. For the first time as well, we're also going to be using the area on the right-hand side to ask for your feedback on the event. So you'll see a feedback tab there. I think you do need to click onto the event chat and you see a feedback tab. So please do let us know how you're finding the event. Give us your thoughts on how everything went, and that tab will be live for the duration of the event. Next, to move to the left-hand area of your screen, and you can see the different areas that are available for you to access via the menu bar there. So first of all, you have the stage area, which you will all be in now to be watching this main session happening now. But below that, you can see a networking area. and an exhibition area. Now, the networking area there is, as well as the targeted networking you have via the audience list of participants on the right-hand side that I've already mentioned. There's also the option to have more random matchups with other participants during the event, and that can be accessed during using that networking tab, on the left-hand side of your screen. I will be talking more about that, and there will be specific times during the event that we do invite you to use that area there. And finally, the exhibition area. So we do have 8 different exhibitors who are with us for the event here today. So you can access all of their stands. You can view the video content, the presentations, white papers, and other information that they have available via that exhibitions tab. So please do make sure you find time to check that out during the event as well. Next, I wanted to say a big thank you to all of our sponsor and partner organizations who have been supportive of the event this year. So you can see we have ITU and ATU as our main supporting partners, and all of our industry partners and sponsors as well, which you can see listed on the screen to the right of me now. As ever, as I always say, this event would not be possible without the support of our partners and our supporting organizations. So we really do appreciate everything that you do and your support to make this event happen. So thank you all very much. I also wanted to mention our hashtag for the event. We do have a hashtag for the conference, and as well as being broadcast here on the event platform, the event is actually being streamed live on Twitter via our Global Spectrum Series account. So for all of you who are joining us in that way, hello, by the way, anyone who's joining us on Twitter, but for you and for anybody else who wants to tweet or post messages about the event on social media, please do that using the hashtag Sub-Sahara Spectrum. And that's available in our reception area. You can see details of the hashtag as well. Now on to the program for today. So we do have a busy day today. So we're going to be starting very shortly with our welcome ceremony. And then we're going to be kicking off our first main session, which is going to be looking at making spectrum work for Africa. And that one's going to be a little bit different to how normal sessions will run. So we'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. We then have a break for lunch before we come back with our second session, which is going to be looking at the digital divide, so tackling global and regional digital divides. And then we're moving on to our first set of showcase sessions. So for those of you who haven't been with us before, showcase sessions are sessions which are coordinated and hosted by some of our partner organizations. And the showcase sessions that we have running today, they'll be running in parallel with each other. We have 2 showcase sessions running today. So you can see the sessions here. 5G spectrum and local industry networks will be hosted by Ericsson, and the importance and socioeconomic value of Wi-Fi 6E and Wi-Fi 7 for Africa, which has been jointly hosted by Microsoft and DSA. So I'll be talking more about those later, but those are our 2 showcase sessions we have running today. And then finally, we do wrap things up at the end of the day with our third session, which is going to be looking at tackling Africa's backhaul challenges. So a lot going on. And as I said, that is just the first day. So I think we better get started. And as I said, the first thing on our program today is our opening ceremony. So without further ado, it's my great honor and pleasure to now officially open our conference and to begin the opening ceremony. So Mr. Mario Manovitz, Director of the Radio Communication Bureau at the ITU, Mr. John Omo, Secretary General of the African Telecommunications Union, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, once again, welcome to you all to the 6th Annual Sub-Sahara Spectrum Management Conference. We're delighted to once again be working this year with ITU and ATU as 2 of our key partners for the events. And it's an absolute honor to have both Mario and John with us here today to participate in this opening ceremony. And we are actually particularly thankful to both of you, both Mario and John today, as I've just learned that both of them are taking time out of their holidays to be with us today. So both of you, thank you so much. It really is appreciated. And we do, as I said, really appreciate you joining us for the conference. So I'd like to now begin by welcoming to the stage Mario Manovitz, Director of the Radio Communication Bureau at the ITU. So Mario, welcome. And we are, as ever, hugely grateful to you and all of your team in the Radio Communications Bureau, as well as in the regional office, to Andrew, Jean-Jacques, and all the team there for ITU's continued support of this event. It's an honor to have you here with us again. And as I said, particularly because you're on your holiday, we do really appreciate you joining us and giving up your time to be here. And I'm sure everyone is really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. So without further ado, over to you, and the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Dan. So good morning to all participants joining us from the African region. and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participants joining from other parts of the world. I would like to start by thanking Dan and Forum Global for the kind invitation. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I would also like to recognize Mr. John Omo, Secretary General of the African Telecommunication Union, who is a friend and a great partner in the main activities we jointly carry out to assist our members in the African continent. So, dear friends, this event comes in a time when we talk about digital as a default, about digital transformation of our societies and economies, and about a fully connected society. But for this to become a reality, broadband connectivity needs to be made accessible to all, even in the most remote areas. The ITU is working towards enabling the development of new radio communication technologies and the provision of services and applications that can expand broadband connectivity for all people, wherever they live and whatever their means. In previous World Radio Communication conferences, as you know, the ITU identified globally harmonized spectrum for IMT that can be integrated in the national table of frequency allocation and used to expand mobile broadband coverage. Moreover, the last conference adopted decisions that support the deployment of other innovative systems, such as large satellite constellation and high-altitude platforms. And combination of solutions could meet the urgent demand for coverage, especially in suburban, rural, and remote areas. During the next days, this event will discuss topics in the agenda of the next WRC23. It will also discuss the implications of a possible IMT identification in the UHF band, C-band, and 6 GHz band, as well as the current decision of some administrations to use the 6 GHz band to expand broadband connectivity using Wi-Fi. Society's increasing need for radio-based technologies and the tremendous opportunities for social development that these technologies provide have elevated the importance of the radio frequency spectrum and of national spectrum management. The increase in demand also calls for the management and coordination of spectrum policies across the region. Ladies and gentlemen, as the director of the Radio Communication Bureau, I have witnessed in the past years the great advancements of the African region in terms of managing spectrum and orbital resources. Under the auspices of the African Telecommunications Union, Africa has developed a set of regional spectrum recommendations, thus fulfilling a long-standing wish of African countries to build a more harmonized ICT market. I recognize this initiative and I highlight the importance of incorporating the international regulations and standards that our stakeholders jointly develop in ITUR into the regional and national regulatory frameworks in Africa. Towards this end, as I mentioned at the beginning of my remarks, the ITU has joined efforts with the African region on several occasions. During the last 2 weeks, the ITU held the Regional Radio Communication Seminar for Africa. The first part of the seminar focused on the use of the radio frequency spectrum and satellite orbits and had a special emphasis on the application of the provision of the radio regulations. The second part consisted of a forum to discuss opportunities and challenges that new radio communication trends bring to the African region. Earlier on, during the first quarter of the year, the ITU participated in the Policy and Regulation Initiative for Digital Africa, PRIDA. We delivered a workshop on software and tools developed by the Radio Communication Bureau to ease the navigation and analysis of regulatory and technical texts. The Radio Regulation 5 table of frequency allocation software and the Radio Regulations navigation tool allows African countries to extract their national table of frequency allocations based on the provision of the Article 5 on the radio regulations. This facilitates the incorporation of the international regulations into the national framework after each World Radio Communication Conference. On another front, the ITU and the African Telecommunications Union are advancing on the optimization of the Geneva 84 plan for African countries. The project aims to achieve an efficient and equitable use of the FM band for analog sound broadcasting and to identify new frequencies to FM broadcasting. More than 45 African countries participating in our last meeting of this project in the end of June. Finally, during WRC19, the ITU put considerable efforts to ensure a successful resolution of Agenda Item 1.4, the adoption of Resolution 559 offered a one-time opportunity for countries having degraded resources in the BSS plan to regain a better reference situation. I commend the in-depth involvement of African countries in applying this resolution. This is notably demonstrated by the fact that all eligible African countries submitted a request for application of the special procedure contained in this resolution. As far as the Bureau is concerned, I carefully follow personally the implementation of this resolution, and I'm making sure that the Bureau provides all possible assistance to requesting administrations. I'm glad to note that coordination agreements enabling the successful application of the procedures of the Resolution 559 have started to be exchanged, and WRC 23 will soon be able to decide on the final inclusion of Resolution 559 submissions in the BSS plans. Dear friends, as you can see, Africa is making considerable advancements in developing both terrestrial and satellite communications. In the ITU, we are eager to support you in this path, closing the digital divide and enabling broadband connectivity everywhere for everyone, which is a common goal, and you can therefore count on us to achieve it. Thank you very much for your attention.
Mario, thank you very much. And yeah, as I said, we do really appreciate you being with us here today. And I think, as you say, there's going to be some significant discussions taking place on WRC 23. It's a big issue that we are going to be looking at. I think the whole of the day tomorrow, actually, we're going to be focusing on key issues ahead of the preparation for WRC 23. So looking forward to that. But for now, thank you very much. And as I said, do really appreciate you joining us, Mario. Thank you. So next up, I would like to now welcome to the stage the second of our speakers in this opening ceremony. That's John Omo, Secretary General of the African Telecommunications Union. So John, welcome. And again, really do appreciate you being with us. It's great to have you here with us today. And we really appreciate the support and guidance that everyone at ATU, that yourself, Kezius, Alice, and all the team have provided us with for the event today. And of course, your time to join us here as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You can hear me, Dan?
Can hear you loud and clear, John. So yeah.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Dan. The organizers of the Sub-Saharan Spectrum Management Conference, Forum Europe, ITU BR Director, our friend Mario Manievi, forum participants, ladies and gentlemen. I am speaking after Mario, and pretty much the advantage I have is that he has said pretty much what I would have loved to say. But let me just offer a few thoughts in my written text, some of which will be repetitive, and I hope you'll bear with me. Let me acknowledge first the invitation to participate at this special meeting, and we as the ATU have always look forward to collaborating with Forum Europe in hosting this forum, and so it stands to reason that we would support and participate at this forum. As an organization, we are convinced that the management and coordination of spectrum policy is one of those areas where no individual entity has the capacity to act alone and succeed. There will be always great demand for synchronized action, and this has no better foundation than a multi-stakeholder engagement forum such as this. Therefore, we remain committed to collaborating with Forum Europe in hosting this event and in participating accordingly. The format of this forum is itself appealing and quite inviting in terms of the spirit of cooperation, collaboration, and coordination, which we very much depend on and look forward to always in our journey in managing ICT in Africa. It is exciting to me as ATU because the choice of the topics over which our interactions will be predicated, the interactive nature of the sessions, the one-to-one and group networking opportunities, and technology demonstrations, and the exhibitions are some of the issues that have been lined up by Forum Europe. And I do really, really appreciate Forum Europe in this regard. Some of the topics, I know Mario has alluded to a good number of them. Making spectrum work for Africa, tackling global and regional digital divide, tackling Africa's backhaul challenges, the future of UHF band, the balancing needs of 5G and other key users in the upper mid-band frequencies, and many others do speak to the need for us to speak about these issues and try to find common solutions. And so, as I've mentioned, the structuring of this forum is such as to keep us engaged and committed to the optimal management of this scarce but important resource. Allow me, therefore, to once again appreciate all the partners that are involved, the supporters, and more so from industry. We do appreciate you and do look forward to working with industry, even as we develop policies, recommendations, frameworks for management of radio spectrum in Africa. The question that I've taken time to think about is just how eager we are to make spectrum work for Africa. And I do this because COVID-19 pandemic has kept people apart from each other, but spectrum and mobile networks have built bridges and kept us together. Today, for example, part of why we are here is to examine the possibilities that lie with tackling the global and regional digital divides and bringing the required spectrum to bear on how we can tackle some of these challenges. And so whether we succeed or not in this quest, in my opinion, is hinged on our dedication to duty and the extent to which we want to go in ensuring that we use spectrum to tackle these challenges. And in all this, we must work together. I recall when coming up with the draft spectrum management recommendations, which Mario has alluded to, a couple of statistics came to mind, and I want to share some of this with you from a World Bank study 2 or so years ago. Across Africa, where there's less than a third of the population still, only less than a third of the population have access to some form of broadband connectivity. And the study goes on to acknowledge that achieving a universal, affordable, and good quality internet and broadband by 2030 will require no less than US dollars 100 billion. We will need, as Africa, to bring 1.1 billion people more online. And that indeed will require exceptional and coordinated efforts from governments, from the private sector, from development partners, from the civil society, so that we all bring the 1.1 billion people to the grid. Whereas the broadband connections in Africa crossed the 400 million mark in 2018, the regional average broadband penetration, including 3G and 4G connections, is still only 25% of the total population, which is still quite below the global average. And so achieving the target of connecting the bringing the 1.1 billion people to the grid is quite a significant undertaking, which will require the deployment of, for example, 250 new 4G base stations and at least 250 or so kilometers of fiber. And with 4G, 3G stations, base stations, the requirement for spectrum comes to bear. Now, there's also the aspect of policy and regulatory reforms to create market conditions that are conducive for innovation, entrepreneurship, and technology deployment. And that alone, just dealing with the policy and regulatory reforms require another 2.5 billion US dollars. The reason I focus on this statistics is one that I will mention in a short while, but the point for now is that Africa requires huge amounts of investments huge amounts of policy and regulatory reforms in order to catch up with the global average. Today, mobile broadband is the main medium of access of broadband services in Africa. And therefore, timely access to sufficient and affordable spectrum is critical. The fact that most of the connections in African countries are and will for a while largely be driven by wireless technologies, which relies on spectrum, is enough a reason and a case for Africa to ensure that spectrum is managed in a way that makes it available, efficient, cost-effective for deployment of various networks. On the same boat, we have also commenced the preparations for WRC 2023, and WRC 2023 coincides with an interesting period, therefore, when virtual digital technologies has become vital for our economies, societies, and individuals. And the fact that we are online, we are engaging 600 or so people registered for this forum, perhaps many more watching us online through other social media networks. It's itself a testimony of the importance that virtual digital technology plays in our lives today. And so the outcomes of WRC 23, as we expect, will accelerate the digital transformation of economies and industries, including millions of people that are still unconnected. And no better technology is there to do this than radio spectrum. And for us in Africa, we have indeed commenced our processes for preparations for WRC 23. And we invite everyone to continue participating. It's mostly an open meeting. On our part, as the ATU, have together with a number of partners commissioned or completed many stakeholder-driven radio spectrum-related projects in the quest for optimal management of spectrum in Africa. Mario has mentioned quite a bit of this, and so I'll just spend time on one that I consider to be important for a forum such as this. Now, this is the development of recommendations on 5G implementation in Africa, as well as other forms of emerging technologies. Early last year, we commissioned a multidisciplinary task group on the basis of a special assignment that was given to the ATU by the African Union Commission to develop draft recommendations on 5G implementation in Africa, as well as other forms of digital technologies. The study is we've gone through stakeholder engagement. We've shared it now with the membership. And some of the highlights are very interesting. Some of the recommendations are extremely interesting. And we do invite the membership to come to terms with this, so that whereas we would say that they are basically recommendations of guidelines, the fact alone that a good number of membership participated in their development is enough a reason to ensure that there would be wide-scale application of these recommendations. For example, we've recommended the adoption of regionally harmonized frequency allocations, especially for core IMT 2020 frequency bands such as 3.3/3.4 to 3.6 gigahertz, as wide as possible, and 26 gigahertz as a start, in order to support economies of scale, reduce cross-border interference, and support common technical standards. We've also recommended the assignment of spectrum for 5G in low, mid, and high bands in sufficient quantities to support 5G rollout and licensing terms that best meet policy goals, including technology neutrality and national assignments. In that regard, the targets of 80 to 100 megahertz per operator in the 3.5 gigahertz band and the 8 to 1000 megahertz per operator in the 25 gigahertz band could be considered. The other recommendation is to allow shared and license exempt spectrum to to increase access to efficient use of spectrum for 5G while prioritizing the use of licensed spectrum. In terms of emerging high-altitude platforms, we've also had a couple of recommendations. We have recommendations on emerging satellite applications, on emerging wireless systems, WAS, and radio local access networks, RLANs. Let me just mention the RLANs and then before I conclude. The recommendation therein is to designate on a license-exempt basis the frequency band 5925 to 6425 megahertz for use by WAS and RLAN equipment restricted to very low power, both outdoor and indoor, and use low power indoor use only as an exclusive non-interference and non-protected basis, and also designate on a license-exempt basis the frequency band 57 to 66 gigahertz for use by WAS and RLAN such as WiGig, and 5G NR/U on an exclusive, non-interference, and non-protected basis. These are some of the recommendations that, as Mario did mention earlier, if we were to apply them on an Africa-wide basis, we would, have similar policy and licensing, operational and regulatory conditions and across Africa. And that would encourage Africa to have a single market in terms of what investors would expect from the region. So it is our plea as US Secretariat that you consider these recommendations favorably in terms of your day-to-day use. As I conclude, let me state that as the World Bank report says, the future has to be worked out together and build it together, achieve it together. There's not a single entity, there's not a single institution that would raise upwards of $100 billion for the sort of ICT investments that are required in Africa. And so let us collaborate more and compete less. And that's why I wish this conference and all the participants the success, and once again to thank Forum Europe and our sponsors for coming through for this conference. I thank you. Over to you, Dan.
John, thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for those kind words and that comprehensive overview of some of the key issues, which of course are going to be picked up on over the next 3 days. So really do appreciate that. And as I said, very much appreciate you being with us. So thank you very much. So that now concludes our welcome ceremony, our opening ceremony, and a huge thank you again to Mario and to John for being with us for that. So next, we're going to move straight on to the, I suppose it's a more scene setting, following the setting the scene that has been done by John and Mario there. We're going to move on to the first session, which also is going to be looking at setting the scene and looking at the issue of making spectrum work for Africa. So this session is going to be run a little bit differently to normal sessions. I think that the plan is, we've actually asked 3 influential policymakers who are going to be with us today later on in the session. But in advance, we've asked them to let us know what they see as the key spectrum challenges for the region, and then to provide messages and challenges to industry speakers as to what they would like to see from them here. So maybe to explain more, I will now pass over to our moderator for the session. So I'd like to welcome to the stage Kezius Mwale. Kezius, welcome, and great to have you with us here. As I said, we're going to be running things a little bit differently for this session, so I will pass over to you to explain how everything's going to be working. So thank you, Kezius, over to you.
What a noble task. So thank you, Dan. As always, quite a number of years we've been working together, now virtual. We hope at least to go back to physical, if not at least some form of hybrid. But let's carry on, enabled by ICT. So thank you to ICT. Otherwise, we should all be sleeping by now, doing nothing. But at least ICT has enabled us to continue to work. In fact, interestingly, in our case, in ATU, for example, personally, I believe we've made much more progress than if it was physical world. So thank you to ICT. Now, this session will run quite a little differently than usual, as Dan has sort of hinted. we'll have 3 parts. The first part will be opening thoughts from what Dan has called as influential policymakers. I guess that's just a subset of them. So that will be the first segment, opening thoughts from them. And then the second segment will be taking responses from the industry. And then the final segment will be panel. Now, in terms of the first segment, which is the opening thoughts, really it's just to probe and seek wisdom from the 3 identified, at least the ones that were available, the policymakers. So the one question which they will try to address is, what do they see as the key spectrum challenges for the region? This would be question number 1. And then the second aspect would be, what would they say to be a key message for the industry? Yeah. And then the third aspect they'll be tackling is, what do they hope to get from this conference? So those 3 aspects are the ones that they will try to address in their video interventions. So let's take those. Let's take those before we get the response from the industry. So the first address we will have is from no other than Mr. Jean-Jacques Massima. Many of you would know, but just in case you are wondering who Mr. Jean-Jacques Massima is. So Mr. Massima is the ITUD rep for Central Africa and Madagascar. Okay, a veteran in this field, I would say. And then the second video we will have will be from Mr. Tom Orwello. Now, Mr. Tom Orwello is the Director Frequency Spectrum Management at the Communications Authority in Kenya. Yeah. And then the third thought we will have will be that from Reverend Engineer Edward Fianco. He is the Deputy Director Engineering at the National Communications Authority of Ghana. So may I kindly request the studio team to play one after the other those 3 videos. Thank you.
In fact, there's not so much challenges in terms of spectrum availability in the regions. My first point is that, okay, it seems that, okay, the most important issue is the lack of expertise and the low number of engineers in the radiocom fields in the administrations. So we need a lot of capacity buildings, trainings, and to have the people allocated these spectrum engineering duties. Now, as you know, the spectrum is considered also as a revenue source in most of the administrations, but we need some efforts to adequate and allocate the necessary resources in terms of equipment and budget and also manpower. This is just to say that, okay, what is missing is maybe the harmonization of the spectrum usage in most of the sub-regions. Some sub-regions are well advanced on that, the SADC region, for example. Some others are lacking of these harmonizations and the use of proper tools for that. So we need, of course, certainly regional planning ongoing with AFISAP by ATU, but this is mandatory for us to harmonize the use of the spectrum in the region.
The key spectrum challenge for the region is spectrum hoarding, which will emerge as the key spectrum management challenge over the next decade. Several operators with licensed access to prime spectrum bands may be unwilling to invest in network deployments outside the profitable urban and peri-urban areas, while at the same time resisting calls for shared access to underutilized spectrum bands.
So what I perceive to be the key challenge the spectrum challenge for the region is balancing the political objectives of government with the needs of the industry, considering that, government requires, high revenues from spectrum, from the key spectrum bands, but whereas industry also has to balance, what the costs are in terms of the cost of spectrum, vis-a-vis, delivering affordable services, and especially new technologies. And I think that is one of the challenges that I see, that especially those of us working in regulation have to always find, struggle to find the right balance. Also, I see equitable access to spectrum being another challenge, considering that, we have some big operators who have become very big and have significant number of customers. And we have operators that also have spectrum. And I do not have, that much traffic because of the relatively very low number of subscribers they have. And it's a challenge for us to try to make sure that those where the spectrum is needed the most, that they have it, without also depriving, smaller operators the opportunity to be able to grow, to be able to compete. And I see that these remain, to me, some of the most significant challenges that we have to deal with related to spectrum.
The key message for the industry is simple. They have to collaborate with the regulators in the regions in order to prepare and anticipate their needs, and not waiting just a revolution of technology. Now everyone's speaking of 5G, and they will come there. But we need to anticipate this in order for the administrations to have the regulatory framework in place, and for them to be transparent and play in very good competitions in order to propose to the people the services. So, of course, this transparency is welcome in the regions, and for them to try to deal with the same market and have a better vision of the needs of services in each sub-region.
One key message I would pass over to industry is that communication services present the best avenue to redress some of the most pressing issues of our time, and most importantly, the gaping disparities in our societies, which is essentially the digital divide.
So my message to industry is we need to pay attention to, connecting some of the rural communities, some of the places that maybe today are perceived not to be, sweet, okay, in terms of the revenues that come from there. Apart from the social objectives, I have seen that, there is certain untapped potential in some of those areas. I recall that many years ago, a company in Ghana, Scancom, which today is MTN Ghana, when with their pursuit for international gateway license, they were required to have service in all the regions. At the time, nobody found the northern regions of Ghana to be economically viable. But then because of, they considered the international gateway as very critical to the operation, they took up the challenge and decided to plant stations there. But interesting, they went there and they found that, hey, the traffic was surging, and encouraged them to keep expanding their network in those places. And today they've become runaway market leaders because they went to the places that at the time nobody considered economically, exciting to go to. And we would like to encourage industry. Currently, I'm leading work in ATU on making recommendations for rural spectrum recommendations for rural connectivity. And I see that the need is there, and industry must begin to pay some good attention to that.
First, of course, it's an excellent opportunity as usual to exchange experience between some developed countries and the developing world, but also to have the same level of understanding of what new technologies can bring to our populations. And these applications, services should be well known by the people for them to appropriate those technologies. So if we can, of course, improve these cooperations by this kind of conferences, putting all the stakeholders and players together, I think we will benefit from better understanding and improvement in the spectrum management in the region.
What I hope to get out of this conference, I hope to learn how other administrations have coped with the increased demand for spectrum resources by telecommunication services and the nature of interventions that have been implemented in response to the requirements by various administrations at the height of this COVID-19 pandemic.
So in this conference, I'm hoping myself, apart from what I'll be sharing, also to get the benefit of learning from other participants and what is going on in their regions, in their countries, and also to be abreast with what is the latest emerging issues and emerging trends and development related to spectrum. I am hoping to learn as much from this conference.
Right. So a lot of wisdom there. I hope you followed the responses keenly, as I did, maybe better. But really, so a spectrum of things, from the key challenges, the key message, and what the distinguished people hoped to learn and hope to learn from this conference. So on key challenges, no number of engineers in the spectrum management arena, so calling for capacity building, harmonization, is key. SADC is doing better, and therefore trying to call for other regions to emulate, if not do better, and then applauding the work ATU is doing on the development of the first regional spectrum plan. We are calling that the AfriSAP. So this is the African Spectrum Allocation Plan. And then spectrum hoarding is a problem. Really calling for shared access to spectrum access, particularly in the underserved areas. Also, balance of interest, between revenue, profit, operating profits on the side of the operators, and coverage on the side of governments. So really trying to see and calling for that sort of shared objective. And also really a balance of spectrum access between the mainstream players as well as the ones that are upcoming now. Key message, calling for industry to collaborate with the regulators as close as they can, and also that they need to be transparent, perhaps in quality of service, pricing, and more, I guess. And then key message again, this was from Mr. Ruelo, specifically saying communication is really the best tool to, first of all, bridging the digital divide and going beyond just bridging the ICT divide, because as you know today, ICT is really the bedrock for all what we do. So in as much as he was talking about bridging the digital divide, is really bridging the digital divide in terms of opportunities, employment opportunities, how and when to start a business, and so forth. So much more than just your ICT divide. Connecting rural communities remains a challenge, and this was Reverend Fianco urging industry to try and And really citing the Ghana example where, surprise, surprise, rural connectivity, rural, traffic from rural communities surprised this operator. And then what they hoped to get from the conference, exchange of experience, some shared level of understanding, learn how other admins are coping with this huge demand of spectrum, COVID-19 interventions. Again, Dr. Fianco re-emphasizing learning from other participants and keeping abreast of what is happening around the world. So anyway, that was my small summary of what the distinguished policymakers stated. So now let us hear from the industry. What are your responses, particularly the key messages, because yes, these were directed to you. So first of all, we will hear from Stephen, the chair for ISOA. Please, thank you.
Well, thank you, Casius, and good day to everyone. We really do appreciate the opportunity to speak at this important conference today for spectrum management across sub-Saharan Africa. I wanted to share a few thoughts today about satellite communications and the importance of satellite communications for Africa, and in doing so, address some of the comments of the policy voices we heard already. I'm speaking in my role as chairman of the European, Middle East, and Africa Satellite Operators Association. ISOA is an organization of 22 regional and global satellite operators, and Africa is critically important to our membership. We feel we have an important role to play in closing the digital divide, and I want to talk a bit about that today. So next slide, please. I don't need to tell this audience about Africa, but it's important to remember that how unique the African continent is. The cultural diversity, the language diversity, the diversity of countries and nationalities, the abundance of natural resources that some of which are important for commerce and others are so precious that we need to protect. And of course, the population has been growing, and the young population that it is, which creates challenges in its own, but also creates opportunity with this energy that comes from young minds around the continent. It's also a continent that's had huge advances in telecommunications. With 300 million mobile internet users, that's a huge accomplishment over the last few decades. But as we know, and has already been stated, it's far short of where it needs to be. So it's also the biggest challenge that we need to address. In space, the African continent is engaged. There are 20 active space programs going on across Africa. And of course, satellite communications always has been an important part of the African telecommunications landscape, and it will be well into the future as well. And we'll talk about that in a minute. So next slide. However, as we know, sub-Saharan Africa has the widest mobile coverage gap in the world. This is the big challenge. And of course, this means that a large number of people have no option for mobile broadband at all, let alone the challenges of usage in addition to that. And the main drivers is the fact that there's this huge rural area across the continent that is just far, from population centers, far from connectivity, sometimes hours away from connectivity for many people. And of course, this is really not acceptable. And the unfortunate part of it is that it impacts people disproportionately. It impacts women, it impacts children, and especially impacts the youth of sub-Saharan Africa disproportionately than other groups. And so Mr. Fianco was right in saying that we need to focus on rural. It is so important. There's opportunity there, and there's obligation there for us to address this. The biggest issue to coverage and usage is affordability. And this question of affordability is not a spectrum question necessarily. Spectrum is not going to solve that particular issue. But at the same time, to address economics, policies have to be in place to incent investment so that we do have greater investment in enablement of people, but also telecoms innovation has to be leveraged because telecoms innovation, including very much in satellite, are key to address the economic gap and to make these services affordable to deploy and affordable for users to use. Next slide, please. Well, COVID-19 has brought the challenge into greater focus, certainly. And one thing that's abundantly clear for African countries is what's stated here by the UN Undersecretary General. We need broadband faster, cheaper, and expanded to the last mile of our populations. And I think Mr. Owero of CA Kenya said it very well in his recorded statement. And I'm paraphrasing him, but he said that telecom services can help address the most pressing issues of our time by bridging the digital divide. Connecting people is an enabler. It's a way of unlocking the human potential and to create opportunities that don't exist today. So that is the task at hand, and that's the opportunity that we all share together. Next slide, please. So this is a time of opportunity for Africa. Africa can play a role in achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It can capitalize on the 5G revolution that's underway globally. It does not need to be left out. And it can achieve ubiquitous and inclusive connectivity. This is connecting communities that are off the fiber pathways of the continent. It's a way to enable and empower youth. It stimulates economic development and to allow people to thrive in their societies. It's a way to protect the precious environment. But one important point to make is that no one solution will address these opportunities. Mr. Omo and Mr. Masima made the point very clearly that collaboration is a key to success. And so to address this opportunity in Africa, it will take collaboration between many stakeholders, between many different technologies, between many different services that are enabled, and of course, public-private partnerships to make it happen. Collaboration is an essential element. Next slide, please. The challenge is reach and economics, not spectrum. Now, it doesn't mean spectrum doesn't play an important role, but reach and economics is a driver. Whether it's fiber, fixed wireless access, or mobile communications, terrestrial solutions alone do not have the reach, meaning ability to get into rural areas economically, or the economics to bridge the digital divide in Africa. The challenges of geography are real. The challenges of distance from city centers is real. The lack of infrastructure in rural areas is a challenge, and density of population. So that's why satellites are so important to the overall solution. Satellite services have the reach and the economics to enable universal broadband access in rural and remote communities. And that's typically done in a hybrid service solution, incorporating multiple technologies, including wireless technologies and terrestrial fiber technologies as well. Next slide, please. And this is happening today. Across Africa, hybrid solutions are being delivered, incorporating wireless, satellite, and other technologies with the empowerment of local people, local entrepreneurs and communities. This is happening. It's being deployed. This collaboration is between technologies, it's between stakeholders, and it's enabling a range of services, whether it's e-government or e-health or e-learning, or supporting refugees, or building up commercial opportunities in various regions as well. Next slide. So I just want to do a quick refresh of where satellites are today, because satellites have evolved dramatically in recent years. And today, satellite is the key enabler and key provider of services for many different sectors, whether it's mining or trade or education or agriculture or rural digital inclusion in particular. And so with massive investment in technology and in innovations, today's satellites are vastly more powerful and vastly different than what even was possible 5 to 10 years ago. in a range of software-defined technologies, multi-orbit services have emerged that are having a significant impact to bring the cost of satellite communications down, to make the economics right for expanding services into rural and remote areas. So it's important to shed misconceptions that many people may have about satellites. Satellites today provide economical services, they provide high throughput services, and they are part of the solution to connect rural. And of course, we rely on the regulatory regimes to support us. Regulatory certainty and access to spectrum is important for us, for the satellite industry, just as it is for the wireless industry, to do our part of the job to bridge the digital divide. So let me summarize on the next slide, please, and just bring things together. First, I want to say that the challenge for regulators has never been greater. The pace of technological change, the pace of changing consumer behaviors, it is just incredible. And so it's really hard as a regulator to be ahead of this and to be enabling the right things. But of course, that challenge is also an opportunity. It's the opportunity to facilitate positive change for the world that hasn't been there before. And so the impact has never been greater as well. So 3 final comments. 1, satellite is essential for connecting Africa. Satellite is part of the core infrastructure today that is being tied together by 5G and other technologies. It's a complementary solution and part of the broader integrated hybrid solution to bridge the digital divide. You, regulators, play a fundamental role. We depend on you, and we very much respect what you do. We all have to have a balanced and transparent approach to things. We all have to be technology agnostic and be balanced about technology and be neutral in that regard. Fair licensing is important. A stimulation and encouragement of investment is important from a regulatory standpoint. And regulatory policy should be viewed as a policy for Africa. One size does not fit all. So while global harmonization is great and should be achieved whenever possible, you have to recognize that Africa is unique and that the needs of the region or the national level have to be addressed. Things are not the same in Africa as they are in the US or Europe, perhaps. And so the unique requirements of Africa have to be taken into consideration with policy. So finally, if we're going to achieve our connectivity goals, it's best achieved through collaboration and transparency among all stakeholders. And so we can do it together. So let's do that. Thank you very much for your time today.
Wow. Well, I put it to you that you can never have it better. Very, very concise, extremely concise. Starting from that, the very fact that, I mean, the simple fact that not any one of us can change that Africa is indeed unique, extremely unique, and that one size will not fit all. Therefore, advocating for complementarity of solutions for which and for where satellite plays its own role, very, very unique role. Covering rural areas, for example, in emergency and so forth, and really reminding. We know regulators know this, that they have the key to the door.
Yeah.
But really again reminding them politely that they are very, very key. The chairman says they have a fundamental role. But I may as well argue that they have a more, perhaps Chairman Stephen, in future we find a better term than fundamental. It should be something more than that.
Yeah.
A regulator can say no, and that's it. Nothing will move. Yeah. So perhaps it's a deeper terminology than fundamental role, something a bit more basic, something a bit more fundamental than the word fundamental itself.
Yeah.
And then, well, personally, I really enjoyed that. And so thank you so much, Chairman. We understand your time is extremely limited. You have a few more things to do. So we'll be welcoming Steve Jones on your behalf.
Yes.
To take the questions.
Well, it's been a pleasure to be here, and I appreciate your summation. You hit my key points very well, and so we're in this together. We're going to work on this together, and I think we can solve the challenges of connectivity and rural enablement together.
Yes, truth be told, because I mean, for you to connect to rural Africa with fiber, I don't know how rich you should be. Okay?
Well, exactly. It's a massive plus.
Yes. So, shall we say the role, the complementarity role of satellite is clear, and that I guess it's the how. So we will hear the how from Steve.
Yes.
Jones on your behalf. So thank you so much, Chairman. Now let us go to Madam Iman, who is the senior specialist standardization in the Nokia standards group. So Madam Iman, please try to. It's a challenge. You have so much, aspirations. From the regulators, you heard them. You heard them speaking about them calling for collaboration with them, being transparent, and that communication is key, and that really they are crying for you, the industry, to connect rural areas. So, welcome, please. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everybody, and thank you for the opportunity for Forum Global to give us the opportunity to speak on my mother continent, Africa. Africa is not, or Sub-Saharan is not far from me. I have been grown up there. I've been raised there. So most of the challenges, and I wouldn't say they are challenges, I would say that there are opportunities are there. There are opportunities like there in Africa. It's need only just to work a bit together. And we in Nokia, we create technology. We create technology that helps the world to act together. It helps the world to act together. Our networks and infrastructure are not only just for connectivity, they go beyond connectivity. They go beyond connectivity to enable self-optimized and intelligent networks for creating that connectivity and mobile broadband, not only just for Africa, but for the global. So the mobile technology and infrastructure, if you go to the second slide, please. The mobile technology and infrastructure are already, the technology is existing there. It's already being developed by technology providers, by infrastructure providers, and by us as well. We have been providing, and we have been working and providing the technologies, the mobile technology that it needed to develop the world, it needed to connect the world. This technology and the new digital system will enable a more innovative and do content offering. And then I just read recently from GSMA that a report, an economical report about the mobile penetration in Sub-Saharan. This recent report is saying that we have 500 million of mobile connection and subscription in Sub-Saharan. 500 million. This is a larger number, and the estimation is that is going to grow to 50% by 2024, and this is a very huge number. So the technology is there, the technology is existing, but the technology alone is not enough. Spectrum and technology, they go together. There are already some bands which are already available, and this is one of the key challenges, or one of the key opportunities, to say that the technology is already there, the infrastructure is there. There are already some kind of ecosystem which is being developed and existing already now, and there are also as well 5G network are live. While I'm speaking, there are also 5G network are live. They are live. They have been already deployed. They have been already used. And there is an estimation that 170 operators around the global are using the 5G, which is the newest technology available for mobile communication. But the question is not the availability of the technology, but the availability of the spectrum. The availability of the spectrum, the type of the spectrum ranges that are needed to foster and to facilitate these technologies this is the main question, and how to use them. It's not only just one band and one type of a spectrum can satisfy the user need and the expectation of those mobile broadband connectivity. We need all of those types of spectrum, and this is one of I would call it a key factor. A key factor is that we need all of those types of spectrum, and all of those types, they are going to serve different purposes. For example, you have the low bands, which is a below 1.5 gigahertz band. There are also type of existing technology that works on FDD and SDL bands. You need a pair of more than 2 by 10 megahertz to satisfy a certain kind of a need, and this will also give you the extended coverage. And as well the indoor penetration, and this is one of the important things. The low bands are playing a very crucial role in this coverage, but not also to forget about the mid band, which is going to give me the coverage and capacity as well, coverage and capacity in some bands. So and then the higher frequency band, which is our purely a capacity band, which has been identified WRC19, and there are also some networks are working with 5G on that one. Having said this, that these spectrum bands are needed, all of them, all type of those spectrum bands are needed, and also a sufficient amount is needed to with the right condition for addressing the user needs. The whole user needs which is coming in this decade and the following future is not going to be only just the pure MPP mobile broadband connectivity, but it also will include other services, other IoT services, machine-to-machine communication, critical mass critical communication, URLCC, and all of those need to be satisfied, and there is a need. As well, in a recent study by Colliago, I have seen that still with the existing spectrum, which is currently under use in Sub-Saharan and in Africa, there is still an estimation of a need of 1 to 2 gigahertz in a mid-range. And this is needed to satisfy, for example, the rural connectivity. One of the things is that how you extend the coverage for the rural connectivity. This is one of the questions which we also need to address and to think about it, not only just from a technology point of view, but also from the availability of those adequate spectrum ranges. This is what one of the things is that if you already have all of those bands which is existing and you need an additional band and new bands, this is also saying that if there is this is a need to be satisfied and need to be taken into consideration. Next slide. So on the discussion on how to improve the rural coverage and the question which is being addressed by improving the rural coverage, there are several technical solutions which is currently available and under study, for example, under ITU-R 5D. And one of those technology solutions, for example, one of them, just for an example, is that how you are going to have a larger antenna systems that are going to extend your reach. This is one of the technical solutions under consideration. I'm just putting you here as an example, but as well you can use fixed wireless access. Fixed wireless access also is an opportunity to extend the coverage in areas where there cannot be a reach for it, and this could also be satisfied by, for example, by the type of the spectrum bands like in the mid range. This is one of the type of the spectrum that could also satisfy this kind of a coverage in that area by using also fixed wireless access as one example. As have been said also by our distinguished colleague from Ghana, there is a task group which is established under ATU, the African Telecommunication Union, and we are going to participate into that discussion and also provide from a Nokia point of view the technology solution that we are seeing it for Africa and which we have implemented also in several countries in Africa. Having said this, I think to improve the rural coverage, it's more needed that you have a right spectrum policy in place. We need to have as well a regulatory framework improvement that could close this digital divide between the unconnected and rural areas. This improvement is already have been start discussing in Africa, and we are going to closely work together in a transparent and in a collaborative mode with administration in Africa, presenting our technical solution, how to close it, and our way how to see the spectrum policy and what kind of spectrum management techniques, including as well shared spectrum access into that direction. Also, another way how to do it is that to adapt technology and service agnostic approach for the spectrum, so that the technologies can be entered into the bands when we are and implementing the newest one. For example, you can do repurposing or refarming of some band to a certain kind of technology like 4G and 5G in Africa, and this is indeed will help to close the gap and will help also to improve the rural coverage. So these are only just an example how to respond to the improvement and how also to respond to a certain kind of with a certain kind of spectrum management and cooperation as well. Last slide, please. Next slide, please. So to sum it up, just to say is those challenges and the improvement is requiring from us to have on a timely manner the sufficient amount of spectrum in the different spectrum ranges with a right condition of use. These are one of the important things. And the experience told us, for example, if you see the experience and how the 5G has been taken up, for example, in the 3.5 gigahertz, this is shows that how this technology can evolve if you are having the right conditions and the right spectrum band. One example is how this is how is a 3.5 is taken up for a 5G technology, and this is have been implemented in several places, and also we have seen some signs that there are also some African countries are implementing this band with a 5G technology. Then not important only just to have a certain kind of spectrum band, but you have to have it harmonized, and because the harmonization is driving an ecosystem. If you have an ecosystem, that means you are going to have an affordability, that you are going to have devices and equipment with less, with let's say a kind of a decent prices. And everything, for example, taking for example spectrum bands like N71, 3GPP example, N71 or N78, and you can see the map how is this being implemented in different areas, and this will drive the prices down. That means you are going to have an affordability, and affordability is also one key message. So harmonized spectrum will have an ecosystem that will be across Pan Africa that will help bring the price as well and the network equipment down. We can also offer some flexible and innovative spectrum use and shared spectrum uses. This could be also taken into consideration. There are also some part, like for example, I could mention for one example is in US that we are having CBRS, this is a kind of an example of shared spectrum access. There is also in Europe the LSA, the license shared access. These are also examples of shared spectrum use. This is also could be practiced as well in different areas. So those experience which is happening in different part of the world that could be also brought up to Africa, and they can be used, and with a certain kind and a right condition can be used. So maybe the very last point which I have to say is that we have the spectrum now. We can use the spectrum now, but we have to foster and we have to facilitate the access and the release of those spectrum bands. But this is not only just, this is for today, but we have also to take into consideration the future. We have to anticipate what we need for a future. So, and to everybody is that the ITUR process is there that create a harmonizer of spectrum and create the right condition for the existing user and the one who are coming. This is one of the process, but the process is taking a longer period of time. That means we have to take into consideration and anticipate as well what we need for a future. The anticipation, what we need in the future, is a very important part. So as Mr. John Omo was saying, that the future has to be built together, and we have to anticipate as well together what could be the future, what could be the needed, what could be sort of technology solution is needed, and we have to take into consideration and create a roadmap, and not only just a roadmap, and create a long-term perspective of the spectrum use. I have just add here in the last slide, if you can just present the last slides, I have just add further reading on what is Nokia have been doing in Africa, the programs which we are doing with UNICEF to launch the internet and internship in schools in Kenya. And I have further reads on Nokia presence in Africa. You can take a look at them and our partnership. Thank you very much.
Wow. You've really driven the ball back in the regulators' court. Yeah. I mean, I must admit, extremely pointed. Okay, saying, for example, a very, well, as a serious statement as saying, spectrum and not technology is the bottleneck. Okay, I repeat that for the regulators to catch this because it's very important. Spectrum and not technology is the bottleneck, saying today we have the technology, acknowledging that there's huge connectivity gap in our region, and that low, mid, and high IMT bands are necessary. Okay, low bands for coverage, as engineers on this forum would admit, made a good compromise between coverage and capacity. Of course, the high bands for your capacity. So perhaps these are for your metros. Again, I'm saying in the mid spectrum range, the mobile industry might as well be looking at 1 to 2 gig as a shortfall. 1 to 2 gigahertz amount of spectrum needed in the mid range. On the question of rural coverage, recommending things like fixed wireless access, innovative spectrum policy, repurposing spectrum, particularly in the lower bands, because we are talking about rural coverage. A timely availability of the spectrum is necessary. Again, we are speaking about the amount, the timelines, and the conditions. Okay, so I guess that means technology neutrality, things like spectrum pricing, and all that. Harmonization is key for economies of scale. It is not enough for Kenya alone, Tanzania alone to do something. They need to bring along everyone for it to make and push economies of scale. The last point, holistic approach is might as well be the answer. So look at today, look at tomorrow, and look at the future. So yeah, okay. We may have like 30 minutes to go for the third segment, which is the panel. So yeah, okay. So here we go. Those are our panelists: Iman, Steve Jones for ISOA, Mr. Tom Ruelo for CA Kenya, Jacques Masima, ITU, and Reverend Fianco, NCA Ghana. Okay, so I guess if we have any questions from the attendees of the conference, I guess the studio will give those to us. We don't have any as yet. So as we are waiting for the questions from the audience, let's start with Steve. Okay, so questions are trickling in, which is good. So let's start with Steve and just ask him really, at the end of the day, satellite has done very well with direct to home services. So with direct to home services, we've seen you could actually say this is massification of the technology. But when it comes to user connectivity, I don't know whether it's a terminal limitation issue or in the olden days when you could only speak about a geostationary orbit, latency was a problem. But now with the LEO systems, do you see, is there any possibility of massification also on the well, your normal ICT connectivity to a user, Mr. Steve Jones? Can we expect this either by eSIM? I don't know. Is this a possibility? Welcome.
Hi, Kezius, and good afternoon all. It's a pleasure to be here on behalf of ISOA, and great to listen to the views of all. So, where will satellite take us next? And I think the obvious answer, listening to the discussions prior to this panel, is that the obvious answer is that we don't have to wait for WRC 23 and its decisions and driving forward changes to access to spectrum across Africa in order to start addressing the needs that Africa has now. Satellite, as part of a hybrid, integrated, unified approach for Africa, can deliver what is needed now. There is sufficient capacity to make that a step without waiting for further years for more spectrum to be repurposed for other services. If we do this together, and that's something that's been said many times, I think that the vision that is foreseen for Africa can be delivered, and quicker than most people suspect. So new high throughput satellite, new technologies. You mentioned mobile platforms, moving platforms. Yeah, that too. All of those things help. The developments with the latest mega constellations, LEO and MEO, obviously will have an impact on delivery. I don't see necessarily latency as such a big issue. You started with broadcast satellite. We know we've been using broadcast satellite and storage ahead to address some of those latency issues for many years. So with a few exceptions, and we are talking about kind of very unique environments, those associated, for example, with industrial use, with a few exceptions, I think satellite can deliver right now pretty much everything that we need to start connecting Africa and those bits that don't currently enjoy broadband. And that for me is just so important. And I'm really pleased to have spent the last few years being part of the beginnings of that process. Ernesto. Thank you.
Okay, so we can expect much more coming out of the satellite industry with their LEOs, high throughput satellites, and a lot of innovation. For example, do-it-yourself connectivity and all this antenna setup, automatic antenna setup, and all that. So thank you, Mr. Siv. We may come back to you depending on whether we have a question from the audience or not. Now, let's ask Reverend Fianco. We've seen a lot of. There's a question from Mr. Peter Space Intel, a report saying in Southeast Asia, we've seen a lot of universal service obligations being accelerated programs because of this COVID. Now, you may speak on behalf of Ghana, on behalf of ECOWAS, on behalf of Africa. This is your wish, Reverend. Has any of this happened in Sub-Saharan Africa? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jesus. And the Baraka de Salah, we say to those of our Muslim friends who are feasting today. It's a holiday in Ghana.
Oh, nice.
I don't know if you can share some other.
Oh, here too. Yeah.
Okay, so during the pandemic, I think that what I observe, I can only speak for Ghana. We haven't had too much engagements for me to be able to authoritatively speak to what is happening across the neighboring countries. But for Ghana, I know that especially because of education, during the period when people couldn't go to school, government then had to have deliberate deployments to support schools in areas where hitherto they did not have connectivity, but then because they have to facilitate their learning, then government had to make arrangements for these people to get connectivity. So in relation to that, I would say that there has been some extra effort, but that is coming more from the side of government rather than industry itself extending coverage. Not much has been done, I would say, especially because of the pandemic. But then I know in Ghana that we have some programs in place to extend voice and data connectivity to about some 2016 localities that hitherto did not have any connectivity.
Okay, thank you. Wow. May the moderator have the privilege to to also chip in and answer this one and help to answer this one. So yes, we've seen these programs. The extent may differ with Southeast Asia, but really from the onset of the pandemic, our ministers at the level of the AU, African Union level met and actually tasked all the institutions to develop programs to help with the pandemic. And for those that may remember, we ourselves at ATU were given the urgent issue of developing options for spectrum release, special spectrum release, just to fight COVID-19. That was done in a record time, under a month. We published that, and really, so you had South Africa, Kenya, Mozambique accelerating programs to cover particularly rural communities, especially for the reason of e-education. Yeah. So again, the extent may be different with your friends in Southeast Asia, but yes, we had those programs. At least that, as a matter of principle, that we can confirm. Now, let's go to the question of harmonization. We know that harmonization is key to bringing down user equipment, even your hardcore, your core equipment. Okay, we know that. But on a scale of say 1 to 5, on a scale of 1 to 5, Mr. Orwelo, how important is harmonization on a scale of 1 to 5? Pick a number and try to justify it. Welcome. Mr. Orwelo is on mute. Studio, are you able to unmute him? Carry on, Mr. Orwelo. Wow, he's still on mute. Okay, but I really wanted to hear this from Mr. Orwelo. No? Okay. Okay, let's invite Mr. Masima. So, Mr. Masima, on a scale of 1 to 5, we know harmonization is important. Pick a number and try to justify it.
3.5, I will say, Cassius. Yes, 3.5, because as you know, you were speaking of massifications and so on. The massification of infrastructure in Africa has to go with the manufacturers. And you know that it's a very, very great challenge in the continent. If we are counting on others to manufacture the handsets we are to use, the final equipment, even if you are providing the last mile connectivity or the satellite connectivity, if there's no harmonizations, the equipment will remain very expensive and not affordable for most of the people in the rural areas. And so that is why I think, yes, we could say that, okay, if the regulatory environment is set up, things are there, okay, you can count for 1.5 points, but you need the harmonization, which is 3.5 points, in order to complete this and to allow the industry to provide cheaper equipment for them and cheaper solutions. And you see, Mr. Jones have said it. At the time, you have only 2 or 3 satellite providers for Africa. Now with SES, Intelsat, and so on, all this competition there, coming with different technologies, because one technology, as it all, cannot fit the needs of the African regions. And the climate is different, the geography is different, and so on. In countries like Congo, Gabon, DRC, and so on, you are 85% of forest. So do you think that, okay, with microwaves and so on, it's very difficult to build a reliable network? But with satellite, yes, you can see where the people are installed in rural areas and try to densify and regroup some villages for them to access. So it's very important, I think, yes, to have this harmonization. And we are in good hands with ARTU, because I hope that with AFSAP, we could have already a common background for harmonizing the use of the spectrum so that we can benefit for purchasing the same type of equipment without no distinction between countries. Thank you.
Yeah, so harmonization is important, but Mr. Masima gives it a 3.5, saying we need to manufacture equipment locally, because yes, it matters. If you are going to order, get equipment from outside your region, certainly there's a cost to that. Yeah, there's a cost to that. So you may have this 100%, 110% harmonization, but still these other things matter. Great. As Mr. Orwelo is settling down, let's go to Madam Iman. There's a very specific question directed to you, saying, thank you for the presentation. Now, in your case, what do you see to be the dominant mobile technology? I quote, okay, not any other technology. What would you see to be the dominant mobile technology in Africa in the near future? This is coming from Dr. Jawad Intelsat.
I would like to thank my colleague, Mr. Jawad. I would like to wish him a happy Eid I didn't find the time to do it. Let me do it here. Thank you for the questions. And what is a mobile technology? It's a mobile technology. It's a technology that is evolving. What could be dominant? It depends on the usage and affordability as well. And it doesn't matter because we are calling for repurposing the spectrum. We are calling for refarming the things. And whether it's a 4G or a 5G, it matters the affordability, it matters the availability of equipment, and it matters also the availability of the network and what is the mobile network would like to implement and deploy. We are going to provide the necessary solution, the adequate solution for that adequate spectrum. So it's a mobile technology. Whether it's a 4G or 5G, it depends on the need. It depends also on the mobile MNO requirements for us. And I have to say that in a recent GSMA report, which I have read this morning, they are saying that 5G is taking up in Africa by 3%. Currently, they estimated by 3%. So this is only just now we are starting a starting point of that. So for the future, we don't. I couldn't say what could be, but both of the technology will be usable in the country, in Africa, in the continent. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a crystal ball. May you share that crystal ball with us, Engineer Iman? Okay. Okay, so a mix. If I had an answer well, a mix of, so you may have your 4G, you may have your 5G, even 6G. So a mix. Okay, now let's go back to Mr. Ruero. We are hoping his mic is okay now. So, Mr. Tom, the question of harmonization. Yes. So the question of harmonization, thank God, this one is almost entirely in the hands of you, the regulators. Okay. Thank God. This one, the question of harmonization is okay. So the question we have is, and Mr. Masima gave it a 3.5 out of 5, the importance of harmonization. So in your case, what would you say is the importance of harmonization? We know it is important, but on a scale of 1 to 5, which number would you say harmonization fit and why? Please, Karibu.
Thank you, Bwana Kezias. I think I'm generally of the same school of thought. I would give it a 4 because we know harmonization results in economies of scale. And economies of scale brings down the prices and also makes it affordable and it can be widely accessed. So I think it's very important, and we spend a lot of time at the ITU looking for spectrum that is worldwide in use, so that it can be manufactured in various places, and in that way we can be able to benefit from that. So that is very, very key, actually. I would give it a 4 and leave the 1 for margin of error. Thank you.
I like that. I like that. So before your mic misbehaves again, I may have another question for you. And this one is relating to universal service obligation or universal service access. I personally know that at the unfortunate kicking in of COVID-19, the Kenyan presidency actually used its privileged position to ask all of you, including the Communications Authority and all the stakeholders, to do everything possible, including expedited trials for loan. It's a pity that collapsed, but the logic was this: that can we try to provide ICT to particularly to the rural community as quickly as possible, as fast as we can, and so forth. Are you able to just say one or two things how this was in Kenya? Yeah.
Thank you. First of all, from a bit further on, I want to say that we identified that we could divide the country into two parts, Part A and Part B. Part A is towards the southern part of the country where conditions are not very harsh, and the Part B is the upper part of the country whereby it's a bit arid and it is difficult to reach, and the population is nomadic. So what we did is that we put different factors for the frequency fees for various parts of that country, so that the upper part, the frequency fees are less, to be able to encourage operators to set up in that part of the country. And then further to that, we did encourage ways and means of reaching there. Among them is the Loon project, which, as you say, unfortunately did not continue, but at least it did avail services in those parts of the country which are hard and difficult to reach. And the other intervention, we have Universal Service Fund, which has been set up, which seeks to, I would say, equalize and get funds from the operators, all of them, and be able to go to the areas which are not economically viable and served and underserved areas. So it's been working quite well. Phase 1 has been completed. We are now going to phase 2. We also use the same to provide broadband to schools and to at least enable every Kenyan have a signal where he is. So we are very, very keen on trying to bridge the digital divide, which I stated in the beginning. And further to that, we want to use other technologies of community networks and those sort of technologies to be able to enable all to communicate, because communication is fast becoming a basic human right. So we do not want that we can enjoy M-Pesa in one part of the country while the rest totally cannot reach it. Thank you, Bwana Kezias.
Thank you so much. And I know that came from the presidency. It was not a joking matter. Okay, so very, very serious matter. That I need to assure everyone on the conference today that the Kenyan presidency actually, took that issue and directed all concerned government institutions to do everything possible to ensure that life was least disrupted as much as possible. And Director Ruelo is just been from outlining some of the interventions. So we have a question from Michael Odhiambo, technical investor of Mombasa, asking Mr. Jean-Jacques Masima, saying he talked about the lack of ample manpower on matter of spectrum usage and management. And Odhiambo is asking, how does ATU, and I'll try to answer on behalf of ATU, but how does the ITU, in your case, Mr. Masima, alleviate this? Are we doing something? For example, are we including academia in our work and operations, Mr. Masima?
Yes, thank you very much. Yes, this lack of expertise, yes, I've conducted ITU since several years to create the ITU Virtual Academy. And as you may be aware, but in each World Development Conference, there's a competition to allow academia to become a center of excellence for the ITU network. So we have actually 4 centers of excellences in Africa, one in Dakar, one Afranti in Kenya, and for him and to know. We have another one which is KIST in Kigali, Rwanda, the one SUPTIC in Yaoundé, Cameroon, and even the School of Post and Education of Cote d'Ivoire. So these centers of excellences are developing in partnership with the ITU capacity building division in Geneva some lessons, some programs in order to try to have these engineers to complete the trainings by some activities oriented mobile, artificial intelligence, broadband technologies, whatever is there with some typical thematics in each of them, so that you can benefit from accessing to these trainings in French or in English, depending of your preferred language. So yes, of course, these academia are also sector members of the ITUD, and they also encouraged to be sector members of I2R and I2T for those who have some research department with very low contributions in order to allow them to benefit from all the membership and all together participate in the planning of this new training needed to have a good expertise in the continent. Thank you.
So in our case, and on behalf of ATU, two things. So to alleviate this capacity issue, human capacity issue, we've purposed that each year we'll be having a tailor-made certificated course. So this would just not be a seminar. Yeah, we started last year. We invited 2 experts from each of our member states to participate in a 1-month certificated course delivered by the ITU Academy, but delivered by AFRATI and the ASMT. This is on one hand. In the case of academia, I admit that it is work in progress. Today, our membership are twofold. Member states who can only come from African countries, and associate members who can come all over the world if they are interested in what we do. But as the Secretary General, I hope you heard him saying he wants to loop in the academia. So it is work in progress. We may have a third category. We may. I'm not committing. I cannot possibly commit the organization, but we may have a third category, which would be the academia. So, Odiambo, welcome. You know where our Secretary General works from. You are able to visit COAS or engage him and see how that could work. We have very little time remaining now. So, in the absence of any questions, thank God it's about time to wrap up. So I just give all of you 1 minute to just say anything you wish. Okay, you can say, I don't know. You can comment even on the last Euro Cup. Okay, is that's fine. Or Copa America if you want. So let's start with Iman. 1 minute.
Thank you very much, Cassius, for giving me the opportunity to wrap up. I just would like to a little bit emphasize that this harmonization is a key for us from a technology point of view, and you all know that 3GPP technologies are all standards, and they are already available, those 3GPP technologies, to be used in a different deployment in a different areas. And this harmonization of the standards in terms of 3GPP, will bring the volume. We will have a mass volume of equipment, And that means mass volume of equipment, that the cost is going to go down. The cost going down, that means that we are going to have a larger economy of scale. We are going to have an affordability. Like I don't have the latest figure of smartphone penetration, but definitely the smartphone as one key of communication nowadays. We are using it underway while we are working around. This is also one important aspect to take into consideration. This is one thing. And then the technologies that we have to anticipate the future. Look for the future. We could be using today one technology, but in the future we are going to go to another technology. But that means that we are going to go not as a jump, but we are going to go step by step.
Okay.
So that my wrap up, and you have wrap up my presentation very well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Distinguished Mr. Jones, on behalf of ISOA.
Thank you, Cassius, and an absolute pleasure to have had the opportunity to speak to all. In summary, for me, hybrid, integrated, complementary technologies stand out as the way forward for delivering to the very diverse communities that you have in Africa. There are lots of models to draw on. Technology and its harmonization is a proven economic benefit. There is plenty of academic research that shows very clearly the benefit of harmonization of technologies. What is less clear from the economic evidence is the benefit of regulatory action to harmonize spectrum. And there are almost no academic papers in that particular area, but I think we can take it for granted because of the emphasis on the ITU process that actually harmonization of spectrum is key. Again, I return to my central theme that we are in a position now to deliver for Africa what it's looking for in terms of broadband access without the need to go down the long route of harmonizing yet more spectrum. And there are lots of technical arguments in that we haven't had time to explore, perhaps for another day. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak on behalf of ISOA.
Thank you. Now, on the issue of whether or not, just because we don't have any written reports on the benefit of harmonization, well, it might as well be why we have the sun. We benefit from the sun. So whether whether there are written reports or not, it may not matter. Well, so says the moderator. But so let's carry on and see. Already, Mr. Massima gave harmonization 3.5 a pass, and Mr. Oruelo upgraded that to a 4, another pass. So shall we continue? And then. So let's go to Reverend Fianco. Really, 30 seconds. What do you want people to hear?
Okay, so let's keep working together. I think that these meetings, these engagements, those of us other regulatory authorities benefit a lot from all these industry stakeholders that continuously try to engage. Because sometimes we get distracted by some of the pressing local issues, which detract from focusing sometimes on some of these regional work of harmonization. And the benefits are not so, the frequent follow-ups from all our friends. I believe I can't see all of you, but most of you whom I believe are in this meeting, keep it up, keep engaging, keep being patient, and also understand when we disagree. Because sometimes, well, not sometimes, all of you represent certain interests. Where we sit, we have to look at what is in the best interest of our countries and our people. And so sometimes we'll politely say, yeah, we've heard you, but no, thank you. And sometimes, yeah, we agree with you, and we would support that position. And today we may disagree with you, tomorrow we will agree with you. So let's keep up the spirit towards helping our people with the benefit of technology.
And I assure you, Reverend Fianco will always smile with you. With you and at you, even when he's disagreeing with you. That's the beauty of regulator. You never frown at anyone. Say I hear you. Okay, Mr. Tom, 30 seconds. What is your wish?
Thank you. I want to first apologize for the connectivity hitch which I took the meeting through. I think I will upgrade these systems. So, as I said right in the beginning in the video that I came here to share experiences, and I would have to cite some of the good experiences I've got from Chairman first, is that connectivity goals are best achieved by a collaborative and transparent approach among all shareholders. I would say that is powerful, as the young man would say it. And then secondly, from Madam Ayman, there's a statistic here that was very, very encouraging, that 170 operators are already using 5G. That is a real encouragement as we seek to move in that direction. Madam Ayman also talked of the importance of a spectrum policy being in place, and I'm happy with the Republic of Kenya spectrum policy has actually been finalized by the Ministry of ICT. So that definitely is in the right direction. And finally, there was a mention of the necessity of a roadmap. And I just want to say the 5G roadmap and strategy for our country is actually in the very advanced stages. So really, it's been a learning point, and you have re-echoed the things we are doing. So we will even put more effort as we continue to try and move forward. So thank you very much, Wana Moderator. You've given us a very lively session.
Thank you.
Look forward to more of this session. Thank you very much.
Maybe we should be having these conferences every week. I will speak to Danny nicely. All right.
I will not mind.
Thank you. Distinguished Mr. Massima, what would be your wish?
Okay, thanks. I think this is very encouraging for me just to say that, okay, we need to be more proactive for countries to try to associate universal service funding in order to improve rural connectivity, but with the PPP. The public-private partnership is a must, because you cannot pretend that, okay, with only the universal service fund, you can solve and respond to the demand, the high demand in rural areas in all the countries. So I think, yes, we should encourage them to try to build these projects and together with the industry, with manufacturers and so on, and then propose a solution which is a win-win partnership. Thank you.
Okay, so we are like 3 minutes out of time. Well, maybe that demands an apology from me, the moderator. So sorry for these 3 minutes, but I hope and pray that they are worth it. So Dan, back to you. Thank you.
Kezius, thank you very much. And you definitely don't need to apologize, because I think that was an excellently chaired session by yourself, and fascinating points made by all of our panelists. So thank you all very much indeed. And it was definitely worth letting you run on a little bit for that. And I'm sorry we couldn't just let it run on for longer. I'm sure we could have done if we did have the time. But thank you all so much for a really interesting session. So thank you. So lots of really interesting points made there. Lots of the key challenges and topics were actually, I think, brought up, and I think it's actually given us some food for thought for a lot of the additional sessions that we have coming up next. So one of the key issues that we did discuss was, of course, the digital divide and rural connectivity. And our next session after the lunch break today is going to be focusing specifically on that. So I know there were some questions in the chat on the audience side on the platform that we weren't able to bring across in time. So we'll definitely be able to look at addressing some of those and more issues in that session, which is at 2 o'clock here on the main stage. In the meantime, though, we do have a break here. So we have an hour and 15 minutes or hour and 10 minutes now for a break. What I would maybe like to ask everyone to do now is maybe the first opportunity that we can use to use the networking side of the platform. So on the left-hand menu bar on your platform, you can see a networking area. That will enable you to go and to connect with other attendees on the platform. So you'll get randomly matched with another attendee by using that area there. You'll then have 3 minutes to chat with them, to talk with them, to get to know them, and then you can exchange contact details if you wish to after that as well. So I do invite you all for the next 10 minutes or so to please go and use the networking area on the platform. Please do go and make use of that. And then, as I said, we do have a break before we're back here at 2 o'clock, and that is 2 o'clock Central Africa time for our next session, which, as I said, is going to be looking at digital divide. But thank you very much to all of our speakers this morning. Thank you to Kezias, all of our speakers, and of course to Mario and John for participating in the opening ceremony as well. Thank you all of you for your thoughts and for all your questions and comments for the speakers as well. As I said, we're back here in just over an hour, but please do go and make use of the networking part of the platform, and we will then see you back here again very shortly. Thank you very much, everyone.